Autumn Athletes, Larry Sorensen here. Today I'm going to connect with Stephen Munatones, find out what makes him an Autumn Athlete that's not done yet. Before we get started, as always, if you enjoy our content, please like, subscribe, ding that bell for notifications. Don't forget to visit automathletesny.com for cool merch and gear. All right. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you start us off and tell us just a little bit about yourself?
So I'm 63 years old. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. That's where I got my first touch of the Pacific Ocean and went to school on the East Coast, lived in Hawaii before I spent most of my career in Japan. And now I've returned back home and I'm involved in my own career. And my sideline is open water swimming. Family, I have four kids. Um, Three of them went to UC San Diego, one went to Cal Berkeley. So we're very a California-centric family. They all played sports. And my wife and I have enjoyed watching them play when they were club in high school and college. And so we're a very sports-oriented family.
Well, speaking of that, what did you do as a youngster in regards to sports and fitness?
So sports and fitness were entirely focused on water polo and swimming. Water polo, obviously, in a pool. Swimming was both competitive age group and high school and collegiate swimming, and also in the ocean, lakes, rivers, and bays. And that was actually one of my lifelong dreams to travel the world. And I've actually used swimming and water polo to actually travel the world, been to 70 countries, and have enjoyed every place I've been.
So when you were swimming as a young person with water polo and did you do like, were you on the swim team in college or high school? Did you do that
Yeah.
kind of stuff?
So I was on I grew up in Southern California at the time in the 60s, 70s, and lesser in the 80s. It was literally the centerpiece of aquatic sports in the world. I worked out both swimming and water polo with Olympians. Actually, I didn't even imagine not being an Olympian because I had so many of them around me. My age group, high school and college coaches were all Olympic coaches. The people that I spent the time in, in the morning workout and the evening workout were Olympians. I was not so good. I was the last person in lane, but their Olympic aura, their Olympic
Mhm.
confidence, really rubbed off of me. I knew that in a workout, I could somewhat keep up with them,
Yeah.
and that was whether it was guarding them or swimming against them. But I wasn't at that level. And so my Olympic dreams were what I mentioned before was traveling the world. I had to figure out a way. I saw all my teammates going to, Munich and Moscow and Europe and Asia and South America to Pan American Games and World Championships and Olympics and World Cups. And I wasn't that athlete. I was a little bit behind them. And so I had to figure out a way, how do I get my way to travel around the world like them? So I was good. I wasn't great.
All right. So what did you do in order to be able to travel the world?
So one of the teams that I was on, I was probably between the ages of 10 and 13, was a team called Lakewood Aquatics. At the time, the head coach there was a man named Jim Montrelli. He had coached numerous gold, silver, and bronze medalists, but he also coached two women, young women at that time. They're a few years older than me. One was Lynn Cox, and she was most famous, known for swimming between Russia and Alaska back in the 80s. And then Penny Dean, who had set the world record for the English Channel. So I grew up going, wait a second. These young women are, at that time, they're older than me, just a few years. And I said, but they get to travel the world. So I can't beat the pool swimmers. I can't out-muscle the water polo players, but I can do what they do, which is swimming in the ocean. And so that is the route I took. Initially, I was literally writing newspaper articles about Penny and Lynn and those kinds of people. So back in the non-internet era, you literally wrote an article, put it in a magazine, that magazine would be published. around the world. So I got to know race directors. I got to know people who were involved in the organization of the sport because they had no idea I was 16 or 17-year-old high school person. I was just this writer who wrote these articles about a sport that is esoteric, very different. It wasn't a hipster sport. You sort of walk in, swim across the channel, and walk out. But I try to make it enticing. And so gradually in college and beyond, I was getting invited to go to all these swimming events, open water swimming events around the world. And I go, wow, I'm not on the Olympic team. I don't have a USA jacket, but I still get to go to Europe. I still get to go to South America. I still get to go to Asia. And it was it was an opportunity for me to fulfill my own dreams.
So you got to travel the world from the writing aspect, but you've also got in the water to do
Yes.
this. So at this point, I kind of want to know, tell us about all the different accomplishments, maybe the highlights, the places you've gotten to go, some of the records. I think you have some
Yeah.
records.
Yeah.
Kind of tell us all a little bit about that stuff.
So I was one of the few people who actually swam and write. So I had this first person view of how cold the water is or how rough the water is or if there was sea life there. So it was not just reporting of, okay, this person got first, second, or third. It was actually, how was it in the ready room with the other athletes? What was it to be an athlete from a first person perspective? So although I was writing, I was also competing.
Hmm.
And the first major race that I won was in my backyard here in Southern California. And that was our national championships, which qualified me to world championships that were held in England. And that was the first time that I had actually been, to England, and that was cool. So I wrote about, traveling in from London up to it was a lake called Lake Windermere, the biggest lake in England. And so it was just a cool experience how I was able to I was going to say these stories. I was going to explain what I was going to do to my parents and friends anyway.
Yeah.
And I was simply putting it in writing that actually the race organizers or the promoters, et cetera, appreciated that because again, back in the non-internet era, they wanted to get the word out internationally. And we had magazines or newspapers, which I then filled in from this first person perspective as a participant. But then I also won, a national championship, a world championships. I did a variety of professional marathon swims, in Canada, Mexico, Atlantic City. I traveled to Europe and Asia, and sometimes I would be involved in the actual organization of the sport.
Hmm.
And then I would run over to the starting line. And I remember one of the races that sort of epitomized this sort of, I had my hands in a bunch of uh, buckets is the Waikiki rough water swim. At the time, and I think it still is, the actual biggest ocean swimming race in the United States and one of the biggest in the world, certainly in the 80s. So I was not only the race director, so I would get up early, I would make sure that the timing systems were there and all the volunteers were in place. I'd make sure that the volunteers were well fed, et cetera. And then I had to go to the starting line and make sure everybody was lined up. And then I don on my cap and goggles and swimsuit and race. So this one particular year, I was racing and I was in the lead pack, and the guy next to me was a guy named Montgomery. He was an Olympic gold medalist, I think two gold medals, and he was right next to me. And I'm thinking, wow, I'd never met him before. But I'm swimming literally shoulder to shoulder to him. And I wanted to tell him, like, dude, like, I saw you on television. Like, congratulations. At the same time, we were battling out for first. He ended up beating me. That's okay because I enjoy. And then at the end of the competition, here I am as the race director handing him the first base award. And he sort of looks at me like, hey, I've sort of seen you before. And, so I really had in this sport my hands in a lot of pies.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would be a race official. Sometimes I was a race announcer, and sometimes I'd write about the race, and I whether I participated in the race or not, I always made sure to swim the course.
Hmm.
So I knew that ahead of time. So I knew what the athletes were facing. And I'm not a great announcer, but when I can tell the audience exactly what these athletes are facing, it gave a little more color
Yeah.
to the event than not.
So what do you have for records?
So I have various channels, channel swims. The oldest record that I have is from 1990. So, it's a good 34-year-old record, 35-year-old record. And we've had Olympians and other people who've tried to break it.
And what is that record exactly?
It's in Japan. It's part of what we call the Ocean Seven, one of the seven hardest channel swims in the world. And it's the word is Tsugaru. That's the name of the channel, and it's 20 kilometers long. And my record is 6 hours and 13 minutes. And there've been since I did it, I have about 180 attempts, including several Olympians, and nobody's come. I think the closest person was maybe 20 minutes. I have other swims that nobody's ever done before. Lake Biwa in Japan, the Palos Verdes Peninsula swim, Teba Island.
All right, so you're 63 now. Are you still open water swimming? And if you are, tell us about
Yes.
that, how you're doing there, and do you have any big swims on the horizon?
Yes, I have lots of big swims. So back in 2016, so 9 years ago, I was working really hard. I was still swimming every day, but I was working very hard, and I had 3 round trips between Los Angeles and Tokyo for business in 11 days. 11 days, I was on this cross uh, continental flight 6 times. I came out the last flight. I knew I wasn't sleeping well. I was under stress. The next morning, I had a heart attack. They call it a widowmaker. I was comatose. I was put under, pretty severe conditions. When I woke up 7 days later, which was a miracle in itself, but when I did wake up, I looked around and I knew somebody was in the hospital, and I figured it was probably one of my parents. I couldn't imagine it was me. I had tubes coming out of every place. And I looked up and I see my wife, I see my mom, and I go, oh no, what happened to my father? Doctor comes in and he looks at me and I go, what's happening? He goes, you had a heart attack. And immediately I'm thinking, I couldn't be me. Like, I eat healthy. I swim every day. I maintain my weight, et cetera, et cetera. I was checking off all the boxes except for one box. That one box was poor sleep. That one box was I had not slept well in 20, 30 years. I just wanted to do so many things professionally and athletically that I was burning too many candles at once, and the amount of hours I was asleep. So anyway, I found out that sleep is a great lack of sleep creates inflammation, and inflammation within my artery, and that artery was the thing that clogged up and stopped. So anyway, at that time, I was literally in the hospital bed, and I said to myself, I got to turn things around. Like, I got to make sure that I'm here for my wife, for my kids, and family and friends. And so when I was in the hospital, I'm thinking, and I still have tubes all over me. They still don't let me go to the restroom because I'm just in intensive care. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, swimming has taken me around the world to date, but here I am in the hospital bed wondering, how did I get here? Well, can I take swimming and continue where I am at least to the age of 80? And I figured if I can continue to swim and swim relatively swiftly until the age of 80, because when you swim, you're pulling, you're pushing, you're using all the muscle groups in your body. I figured I should be a relatively healthy guy. I know my problem is the lack of sleep. So I need to improve the sleep component of my life, which it took some time for me to figure out how to improve my sleep, but I did that. And so from the age of 60 to 80, I put a 20-year plan together. And every year I do a different adventure in the ocean. Uh, Sometimes it's a race against other people. Sometimes it's a solo event. And sometimes it's swimming in an area where nobody has ever swum before. So I've done four of those now. And I have another 16 to go because at the age of 80, what I'd like to do, at least my goal is to attempt to swim across the English Channel. Now, the oldest person is 73, a fantastic swimmer, a cardiologist, Dr. Otto Fanning from South Africa. And he and I and others have discussed like how do you have the strength and stamina to swim across the English Channel after the age of 70? And so I've been plotting all these years how to develop or maintain that level of strength and stamina in order to reach that goal of 80. But because long distance swimming, ocean swimming, marathon swimming is such a cerebral event. You can't see anything, you can't hear anything. It's you face down in the water. It's a very mindful event. Yes, marathon running is tough, ultra cycling is tough, mountaineering is tough, but you're on land. We're a terrestrial animal, traversing the earth. In the ocean, it's you and marine life. It's you and your thoughts. And in order to maintain not only my physicality, my strength, and my stamina, but also my ability to have what I call the Spartan mind, to be able to understand, like, I got to swim for 12 more hours in cold, rough water. I need to maintain doing that. I can't wait now and just train and then suddenly at 80 figure, okay, I'm going to do the English Channel. I got to maintain that Spartan mindset. I got to maintain that strength and stamina every year up until then. And that's what I enjoy doing. It's healthful, it's exciting, it's adventurous, and that's just my chosen road.
So obviously you have big goals there, long-term goals for sure, but what's the day-to-day for you? How do you work out? What's your training regimen?
Yeah, so I wake up early, always have, since I was telling you I was being trained under these Olympic coaches. So I always wake up before school. I still wake up before dawn. This morning, for example, I wake up at 4 o'clock. I'm in the pool by 5. I swam for 3+ hours. That was roughly 13, 12 and a half kilometers. So roughly, 9+ miles I'm swimming in a pool. The afternoon, I'm going to be walking for 2 hours. I probably shouldn't, but as I walk, I have business calls, I text, I do emails, but um, I want to walk. I don't jog, I don't lift weights. I swim and I walk. I literally use my body weight to keep me healthy and as strong and with as much stamina possible. I don't do every now and then I'll have a teammate or someone I swim with and we'll race 200 meters or 100 meters or some short distance. But typically I'm in a zone 2 plus, sometimes a zone 3. And every now and then, once a month, an old buddy will come by the pool or swim in the ocean and we'll race for 100 and 200 meters. That's just more for fun than anything else. But typically I'm training in a zone 2, sometimes zone 3, mimicking exactly what I intend to do at the age of 80. So I'm swimming every day, not necessarily 3+ hours every day, but a good amount. Minimum I'm swimming a day is 2 hours, and I'm walking every day. And that's what I do. It's served me well since I had that heart attack.
Mhm.
Um, and hopefully it will serve me well for the next, 2 decades.
So that's a lot of time that you are exercising. It's going to call for a lot of fuel in your body. So how much do you track your calorie intake? How many calories you eat a day? Do you track your macros as far as, your proteins and so forth? How do you approach diet and nutrition?
Yeah, I have a better approach. My wife is Japanese, and she gives me a great Japanese diet. It's very balanced. I have no idea what the caloric intake is, but it's a traditional Japanese diet, which is fish, rice. We have meat, pork, always vegetables, many fruits. So it's a very well balanced diet, and um, and that's why even when I had a heart attack, it wasn't because my calcium score was high or my cholesterol was high. So my blood work is fine. It was just this lack of sleep. So, we've been married now 32 years. And so I'll continue that diet for here on out. Even the desserts that we have. The Japanese desserts, I believe, are delicious, but they're not overly sugary.
Mhm.
They're based on a real food, a bean paste or rice based, and I just enjoy very much what she prepares for me.
I want to switch gears just for a second here because you are the CEO of Katsu Global.
Yes.
So I want to know a little more about that.
You ask about my training. I do move a lot every day. I swim 2 hours a day minimum. And some days I'm swimming 3 to 4 hours a day. That's a lot of activity, even for, top level athletes in their teens and 20s. I'm not going to zone 5, but I'm at zone 2 and I do walk. So in order to do that, I need to have a really specialized recovery program. And it was 25 years ago, I met a doctor, Dr. Sato in Tokyo, and he had actually created Katsu, which are these bands that you put around either your upper arms or upper legs. And when you put the bands on and they're inflated with air, they actually engorge your limb in blood. So what happens is the band inflates. I won't inflate it now, but it inflates. And then what happens is your blood goes into your arms or leg normally and is slowed down coming back. And what happens is there is an engorgement of blood in the limb, but the band inflates and deflates every 30 seconds. So every time it deflates, this excess blood in the limb whooshes out. Well, part of the stuff that's whooshed out is the built up accumulated lactate. And so even though I work out and I exercise a lot, after every workout, I'm using these bands on my upper arms and upper legs to get rid or dissipate the accumulated lactate as much as possible. So literally an hour after I finished a workout, my body physiologically, not necessarily psychologically, but physiologically, it's prepared to do it again because I don't have any accumulated lactate. So I don't have that DOMS feeling or that feeling of fatigue. And so Katsu is a invention by this Japanese doctor. It's now sold to many Olympic athletes, professional teams, the US military, et cetera. And I just happened to meet Dr. Sato after a swim meet in Tokyo. I thought what he was doing was fascinating, and little did I know, you know, uh, well, 13 years after we met, that I would be helping him expand his invention around the world. And coincidentally, it actually helps me with my own training and recovery.
If people are interested in learning more about this, where can they find you?
They can find me at, well, that's the way you spell it. Kaatsu. Ka means pressure, because that's what you're putting on your upper arms or upper legs. And atsu means pressure. So additional pressure, that's what it means. And many people know or heard of shiatsu, kind of massage. Shi means hand. Atsu means pressure. So
Hmm.
ka-atsu or katsu is additional pressure, and you name it. Athletes in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, our ski team, our swim team, etc., use it. And most of our users, 70% of our users, are actually people over the age of 55 for aches and pains or other things that you have as you age. And I just simply use Katsu for my own purposes because I'm training a lot.
Mhm.
But I also, because I run this company and I have 4 kids and there's things happening, I can't just train and then take a nap and then think about my next thing. I need to recover very, very quickly. And as you can see in my life, I try to be very synergistic at what I do. I use writing to travel, to swim, and to compete. I use Katsu as an augmentation of my training for recovery. So all of these things sort of intertwine, and for me, it's a very, very efficient way to maintain my athleticism.
And if you're interested, you will post the links to the websites in our description below. And I'll also post some links to some of Stephen's writings. He has an extensive library of literature out there. So you can find him and learn a lot more about what he's done from a career standpoint. Okay, so Stephen, we're going to switch back to you just a little bit. You talked about the mental aspect of swimming. Um, what's really your motivation and what keeps you motivated to do these things? And you set the long-term goal, of course, but when you are in the you're going out for a swim for 3 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours, what's the motivation and the drive to really keep doing that at the age of 63?
Some of it is external, and because I continue to write about people like myself swimming around the world. Every single day, I get information or I write about people who've done extraordinary things at every age. Some are disabled, some are former athletes, some are, adult onset athletes. And so they provide this stimulus for me, this motivation, like, God, if she can do that, if he can do that, what is preventing me from doing it? And then my own, so that's the external motivation. And internally, I did a study many years ago, and I looked at 6 different activities. 3 were land-based and 3 were water-based. And the 3 land-based were the shot put, the 100-meter dash, and the marathon run. And on the water side, I looked at the 100-meter swim, so the equivalent of a 100-meter dash in the water, and then a marathon swim, and then a channel swim. And I plotted all of the world records versus all of the masters world records. And I found that the current world record, let's say in the case of Usain Bolt in the 100-meter dash, and the world record holder at the age of 30 or 35 or 40, the relative percentage was not that great. But then I saw once you get to that 45 to 50-year-old age group, the delta starts to spread. And then that delta sort of keeps constant. And it doesn't matter whether it was the shot put or 100-meter dash or marathon run or anything in the water.
Hmm.
And then it held steady to about from that 65 to 75-year age group. And then the delta spread again. And then it held constant until the centenarians, 100 years and older. So, and these are 6 completely different athletic endeavors. And I simply plotted the best masters age group athlete in the world versus the best human in history on these 3 things. And it was a very clear delineation where the human body and all these six things started to decrease in ability. And it was that sort of 45 to 55, and it was sort of that 65 to 75, and then over 100, obviously. The data with over 100 was much smaller, obviously. And so that is my internal drive. That is, so I know what these world records are. I know where the human body will start to degrade or, not have the same ability. And so that's my internal drive. Like, how can I maintain this delta for as long as I can? I know this delta is going to increase, meaning I'm going to get further and further away from the world record holder, but I'd like to keep that delta as narrow as possible. So I've got an external motivation and this internal data-driven motivation.
All right. Well, Stephen, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to give us a little insight on what makes you an autumn athlete that's not done yet. I'd like to wrap up by giving you the floor to just give us some final comments.
I think anybody over the age of 50 has so much more potential than we actually think we do. I think the number of people who can do something, and it doesn't have to be athletic. It could be writing your autobiography. It could be learning a musical instrument. It could be whatever your interest is. It could be traveling to a different part of the world that you've never been, but you always wanted. I think after the age of 50, we in our current contemporary society has only just scooped the surface of what our elderly population, and I'm counting myself as elderly, is capable of. And I think all of the tools that we currently have, whether it's AI or the internet or whatever we have, modern medicine, etc., will enable the future 50, 60, 70, 80s, and 90-year-olds to do stuff that right now we think is unheard of and unprecedented. 5 years from now, 15 years from now, what our 70, 80, and 90-year-olds will be able to do will blow our minds. And I just like everybody to try to be part of that growing population of older, accomplished humans.
Well, there you go, folks. Stephen Munatones. He is definitely an autumn athlete that's not done yet. Remember, keep moving, set your own goals, and train hard to achieve them. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.